Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel, and today we're going to be talking about the fraud allegations made by the Liberal government against people who are apparently applying to the CERB fraudulently, and we're going to break that down. So here's a video of Justin Trudeau speaking on the fraud allegations, and this video is from CTV News. So here we go.
We made the choice as a government from the very beginning that we would help those millions of Canadians. And getting that help to 99% of the Canadians who needed it quickly and rapidly, if it meant even accepting that 1 or 2% might make fraudulent claims, was the choice that we gladly made. We needed to get help to Canadians immediately, and that's what we did. If we had asked the public service to perform background checks on everyone applying for the CERB, we'd still be waiting to get those checks out. And people needed that money. Now they needed that money last month when we delivered it. So saying, we have put in strong measures to ensure that anyone who is trying to defraud the system will get caught, and there will be consequences. But that was not our priority. Our priority was helping people immediately, and the fraud measures will kick in the coming months.
So there are many ways you can look at this. You can look at it that, okay, well, you know, the rules are set in, and if you go against them, you should be charged as it's your responsibility to understand the law. Or you can look at it in another way, that there are many desperate Canadians who should qualify for the CERB, like people who have made last year in between $1,000 to $5,000, who should be able to qualify but don't. And those individuals could be applying right now, I guess, fraudulently on the government standpoint for the CERB, or just people in general who are struggling and not making ends meet, and who desperately need the money and aren't receiving it. And so you can look at it on that side, and a lot of people, I feel, aren't looking at it at that side. And I understand that, yes, there probably is a very small percentage of people who make a vast amounts of wealth and are still applying and taking advantage of the system, but this easily could have been controlled if we had a universal system in place that the NDP specifically proposed at the start, and this could have been all wiped off the slate, and we wouldn't have to worry about who's fraudulently applying and who's not if we just had a universal system, a universal basic income right from the start for this crisis. One of you guys tweeted me this article a couple days back that is from Read Passage. They are a great nonpartisan leftist and progressive news outlet. I'll definitely link them below. And they broke down some absolutely devastating statistics for the Canadian economy in respect to money we lose each year to tax evasion and tax loopholes from the ultra rich and corporate Canada. So let's break those down. So one staggering statistic is that each year in Canada, we lose $62.3 billion. Yeah, $62.3 billion each year to tax loopholes and tax avoidance from corporate Canada mostly, and the ultra wealthy in Canada. When we break that down even further, we find that specifically we lose $26 billion each year from tax havens, from people investing money or corporations investing money into tax havens. We lose $26 billion. So here's a video of Richard Canning, an NDP MP from BC, and Peter Julian, another NDP MP from BC, who's specifically the NDP's finance critic, breaking down this $26 billion we lose each year that was actually discussed during a finance committee meeting. So here's the video.
And Canada, unfortunately, has one of the worst records in the entire world when it comes to tax havens. Both the former Conservative government and the current Liberal government have been signing tax haven treaties right, left, and center. What the parliamentary budgetary officer estimates is that, and this is a conservative estimate, what he said to us at the finance committee is this is a minimum, but it's probably far beyond this number. We lose $26 billion a year to overseas tax havens and overseas tax shelters. $26 billion in funds that could go to fund healthcare, to fund seniors, to fund housing, to fund transition to clean energy, to fund a universal income, to fund all of those things that we struggle with. The government often says, well, we just don't have the resources. You start with stopping what is a hemorrhaging of tax dollars overseas tax havens.
And another even more staggering statistic that Passage was able to find and bring up was that between 2016 and 2018, PBO made a report in 2019 that specifically Canada lost $1 trillion between 2016 and 2018. Read Passage states that this is most likely from legal tax evasion that we legally allow corporate Canada to do, that they specifically found this money flowing from corporate Canada to offshore tax havens. Just in case somebody or some of you guys don't know what offshore tax havens are, they're places around the world where people can store money to avoid taxes. I believe most people store their investment money in there, specifically because usually you earn more money from investments than from your actual steady income, at least specifically within corporate Canada. And so that's what an offshore tax haven is. And specifically one is the Cayman Islands is one that is a major one a lot of people store their money in. And Ethan Cox on Twitter, who is one of the co-founders of Ricochet, another great nonpartisan leftist news organization, so I'll definitely link them below as well, tweeted this out, where Trudeau has decided to bar companies that have been convicted, so specifically convicted companies that have been charged with tax evasion, from receiving government bailouts, I believe, or just really any support from the government in general. But the gag of it all is that the majority of these companies haven't been convicted in Canada. Not even Loblaws, that was just taken to court, I think not too long ago, wasn't even convicted. So it shows you that these companies are still going to get bailouts from the government and still going to get money from the government, from our tax-paying dollars, while they have $62.3 billion in tax havens and tax avoidance and tax loopholes, while we get little to nothing. I believe there's still 1 million Canadians, if I'm not mistaken, who are left out of the CERB, who are unable to apply for the CERB, and the Trudeau government loves to brag that no one's going to be left behind. Well, 1 million Canadians are being left behind currently, and it's a complete disgrace, and this isn't something we should be proud of and we should brag about. And Passage found that 200,000 people apparently, or 200,000 applications have been listed as red flags by the government in regards to fraud allegations to the CERB. And if we look and see that apparently 3 million Canadians have been left behind, approximately 200,000 of those people, let's just say, could be fraudulently applying because they're so desperate to get money because they're not able to qualify. And so that could easily be many desperate Canadians just applying because they have nothing else they can do. We could have easily, once again, avoided this whole situation by just having a universal basic income during the crisis to ensure that every single Canadian, no matter their income, will receive money from the government to support them through the crisis. Well, of course, like always, you're going to have people ask,
how you gonna pay for it? 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 How you gonna pay for it?
And there's two ways that we could pay for it. And one way is through modern monetary theory, if you believe in this form of economic theory, which essentially is that the debt isn't inherently bad, and that a debt in the government sector is usually a surplus in the private sector, which is Canadians and such. And so that the debt isn't inherently bad. Yes, there can be way too much debt, and yes, there can be way too little debt, but right now we're in a crisis. And so the debt is not necessarily inherently bad. And then there is the other one, which is more of a Keynesian style economic approach to it, which we would implement after the crisis. We'd implement a Green New Deal. So we would move our economy to a green-based energy economy where we would create many good-paying jobs, unionized jobs, and with safe working conditions via the government. And we could also set up a new deal as well, make within our economy that doesn't specifically go with the Green New Deal, but is a new deal in itself, and we could create many jobs out of that. To those of you who don't know what the New Deal was an economic stimulus that the FDR government in America used during the Great Depression in order to get the United States out of the Depression, and it was very successful. They essentially hired anyone via the government to create art or to plant trees or just to get people to work. They would pay you to almost essentially do anything. And in response, they were able to successfully get the United States out of the Great Depression. And we could also increase, on top of that, the wealth tax. We could also increase or create a Bay Street transaction tax. And we can do kind of stuff like that, remove tax loopholes, be a lot more stringent, as we have talked about throughout this entire video, on tax evasion, and earn a large amounts of money to help pay back the debt and even cause a surplus after the crisis is over in order to restore the economy. And so that are a couple examples of what we could do to pay for this UBI that we could most likely easily pay for. And so, yeah, I know the NDP during the 2019 election proposed a super wealth tax that would tax anyone who earns $20 million or over. And it was estimated that that would give Canada an annual income of $70 billion over 10 years. So $7 billion a year. That is one thing we could definitely do. On top of that, we could move to a universal pharmacare system, which in 2019, I believe, the Hoskins report, the report that did a whole analysis on what would be the best pharmacare approach for Canada, which they recommended that it would be a universal pharmacare program. Well, in that same analysis, they were able to find that that would save Canada on average $30 billion over 10 years. So that's $3 billion every year past, I think, 2022 if we were to implement it. And those are just a number of ways that we could save money to pay back the debt after we get out of the crisis. And it's 100% attainable, but because of the neoliberal consensus that has been in Canada since the 1980s or even late 70s, we're most likely not going to do any of this. So we as Canadians need to push the Liberal government and hold them to account and ensure that they hopefully will implement some of these things, or will push, they will maybe do the universal system, which I really doubt they'll do, but we need to push and hold the Liberals to account if we want to get any of this in, because from what it's shown, they are not likely to even budge on many of these things. So I hope you guys enjoy this video, and make sure to comment, like, and subscribe, and share the video if you haven't already. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye.